Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. Portugal, Italy, goalless draw that did see an improvement in Italy's performances, but also allowed Portugal to win their group without Cristiano Ronaldo's involvement. How did they do it? Where did both sides go wrong? Don't worry, here at the interviews, we've got you covered. So on this edition of the interviews, we're going to briefly break down Portugal against Italy. So before we get into today's video, don't forget to give our video a thumbs up if you do enjoy it. The bell below does give you daily notifications regarding our organic, unfiltered soccer/footy analysis. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. In today's video, we're going to break down the first half and see why Portugal struggled and where Italy found their joy. Then get to the second half and see how Portugal were able to improve and why Italy were unable to build on the success they had in the first half. But first, let's get to the starting lineups. We have Italy in what should be a 4-3-3. Up front, Immobile, out in the wider areas, Insigne and Chiesa, and in midfield, they went with Barella, Verratti, and Jorginho. Then we get to Portugal, more of a 4-5-1 when you really break it down, based on the fact that they didn't have much of the ball in the first half. Andre Silva up front, in the wider areas, Bernardo Silva and Bruma, and in midfield, they went with Pizzi, they went with Ruben Neves, and they went with William Carvalho. So now, let's get to the first half and see why Italy were able to have so much success in the first half. So we break down the opening half and we look at how both sides look to approach the game. Italy's shape was pretty interesting. How they did line up was they had the two center backs in deeper positions. Florenzi never really looked to get forward either. He maintained his position on the right, kind of level with the center backs as they did split out and look to get forward. Perhaps they were wary of the counter-attacking threat that Portugal does possess and the fact that Bruma is an advancing direct threat, so they didn't want Florenzi to push forward so that Bruma could attack space in behind him. On the other side, however, they had Verratti push way well in advance and peg back Bernardo Silva. So that was key. So he was holding the width. They had Chiesa holding the width against Mario Rui on the opposite side. But the real battle here was the fact that Portugal's midfield just weren't up for it. They weren't closing down space. One of the issues that they did have was Andre Silva here is tasked with sitting on Jorginho. That is a big task in itself. But the other thing here is that Chiellini and Bonucci, most teams seem to forget that they're able to play the ball out of the back. They're able to operate as additional playmakers, as additional distributors. So they were able to push forward. Eventually, Andre Silva has to press one of them, and it allows Jorginho time to get on the ball. So that was one aspect. The second aspect here is that you have Verratti, and Pizzi's not getting close to him. Verratti was able to skip past him on several occasions, able to drop off a bit deeper when he wanted to then make it 4v1, and he wasn't pushing out or getting close to him. That was a big issue for Portugal, and that was the other factor. William Carvalho did a decent job on Barella, who is able to retain possession and also look to mix up his play, making forward runs in behind, trying to stretch the pitch, trying to drag William out of position. So that was one element of it. But the other factor was that they didn't need Andre Silva to do the dual job on Jorginho and the center backs, because all they needed was Ruben Neves to step forward. Italy don't have that number 10 that could really create chances from those positions between the lines. Yes, Insigne is a threat, but you can have Cancelo track him into those positions if need be. However, Neves was just here. Cancelo wasn't really tracking Insigne. And what happened here was Insigne was able to always drop into the space ahead of Font, ahead of Cancelo, and to the right of Neves, and that was a big problem. You have Verratti with space, Jorginho eventually finding space, and then again, you have Insigne dropping into that zone right there against Neves, and they were able to overload those central areas, create numerous chances, force players into bookings. So now we'll get to that and see what chances Italy created and why Roberto Mancini must have been upset that they weren't up 1-0 going into halftime. The one aspect of Italy's play that also should have been mentioned was the fact that they did press from the front to prevent Portugal from playing out the back, which meant that they had the wider players in Insigne and Chiesa pull out to the center backs that did split wide, and when Ruben Neves tried to drop in between, they had Immobile pushing out onto him. That meant if the ball's pushed out to the shuttlers, which they did cut off those passes, if the balls did get pushed out to Mario Rui or Cancelo, they could push the shuttlers out there and then have the fullbacks push onto the wider players. But they did cut off those passes, so they never really tried to go down that route. And Italy were able to really stifle Portugal there. And that was one of the reasons why they were always able to maintain the ball, because whenever they tried to punt it over, Chiellini and Bonucci were able to win aerial duels over Andre Silva. And Portugal really lacked a counter-attacking threat besides punting the ball forward and hoping that someone could beat another player 1v1. When we look to the chances that Italy do create, however, we have to look at the fact that, again, at the start, it was about Insigne dropping into space to the right of Pizzi. And what we did see there was one play in particular, Jorginho finding Insigne, and what happens there is that it's Verratti who finds Insigne, and he drops off to Pizzi. He plays the ball back. What happens now is that Andre Silva and Pizzi try to swarm him and step closer. He plays the pass into them to split them. And what happens there is Jorginho backheels the ball around Neves, and it goes to Insigne to the right of him. And Insigne is able to skip past Ruben Neves, and he drives that goal. And what happens there, he curls his effort on goal that is pushed away by Rui Patricio, but it does fall to Immobile, free on goal, but he skies his effort over the net. That's a big chance for Italy that they need to convert, and he wasted it. And that's one issue that Italy have, that's not having a clinical finisher up front. Another opportunity, again, you see Insigne drop into that space to the right of Pizzi, and what happens there? He drops in, receives the pass, side foots it back to Verratti, and then gets it back again. And we see Neves and we see narrow Cancelo. The ball is then played in between them for Immobile breaking into that space, and he's able to run at Font, and he tries to pull it back for Barella breaking into the box, but William intervenes and makes a vital interception. That was pivotal. That was a great opportunity for them. Portugal did have a brief spell where it looked like Bruno was going to be able to get onto the ball. We saw Rui Patricio clip a ball into that right space, and we saw Andre Silva attack it with Florenzi. What happens is that it falls into the path of Bruno, who's able to skip past Bonucci with ease. Chiellini's forced to come over and clear the danger, but again, big warning sign. Then we saw Bonucci step forward and try to play a pass into Florenzi that was intercepted by Bruno. It was a misplaced pass. He cuts centrally, and he tries to play the ball in behind those two, the Bonucci and Florenzi, for Andre Silva darting into that space, but Chiellini read it well, came across, made a vital intervention. Those were two warning signs for Italy, but Chiellini came to the rescue, and that was pivotal for them. So when we look at some of the other chances that Italy did have, you have to look to the fact that there was a pass, and you had Insigne dropping off to receive the pass from Bonucci just ahead of Neves. What you see here is Chiesa looked to dart in forward, so he pulls out Rui, and then you have Barella pushing ahead of William, who keeps his position and moves into that wide right channel. What happens there is that Insigne plays the diagonal out into him. Rui comes across, and William does do well to cover back into his space, but the cross into the box evades everyone, and Cancelo was able to clear the lines. But again, that is a big warning sign for Portugal, and Italy need more markers into the box. We look at another opportunity for Italy. What ends up stemming from there is that you have Verratti skipping away from Pizzi. What he does do now is once he skips away from him, he plays a pass in between Pizzi and William to Barella, who's on to the right of Neves, and you had Chiesa pushing out to the left of Neves. Now you could see them trying to overload. Neves is forced into a foul. That is what happens there. And as you can see, he's getting overloaded. He's forced into a booking, and that is a big warning sign. Portugal needed more men into that central midfield position to help out Neves because he was getting overloaded by Insigne. And you can see there, they were trying to do that repeatedly, and that was a big issue for them. We look at another opportunity for Italy again, and this is one of their better chances of the half, and it's again Florenzi squaring it to Jorginho. Jorginho not really closed down, and what does he do there? He plays the pass in between William. He plays it to the right of William, and what happens there is that you have Verratti stepping to it, or Verratti stepping to it, picks up the ball. What do we see here? Diaz is just a bit higher. You have Immobile now making the run in between those two center backs based off the fact that they're not in line. So he steps forward, plays the pass in between there. First time shot. Patricio makes a big save. Immobile, with a player of his caliber, should be finishing that opportunity. Italy should be ahead, but they're not. You have also a pass in between William and Bruma from Jorginho, not closed down. What happens there? Chiesa picks it up. He ends up running at Mario Rui. That leads to a booking. They were finding so many holes, splitting the midfield. Portugal were not compact. They didn't have a counter-attacking threat. They were being overloaded in that central area, and they were lucky that Italy didn't have any sort of threat inside the box, because the final opportunity that we look at, it's Bernardo clearing his lines. Chiellini ends up nodding it into Jorginho, who slides it out wide to Biraghi. He combines with Verratti to overload Bernardo. Cross into the box, Immobile occupied by the center backs, Mario Rui able to clear his lines. But when you break it down as a whole, Italy pressed well, prevented Portugal from playing out the back. They were able to find pockets in midfield due to Verratti, Barella, and the fact that Jorginho wasn't closed down. They got Immobile into good positions. He wasn't scoring. Insigne was finding pockets to the right of Neves, but nothing was going Italy's way in the final third. They need to be better. So now let's get to the second half and see what changes Fernando Santos made to help Portugal get back into the game. The second half saw a bit of an improvement from Portugal. What happened is that Bernardo Silva moved to the central role as the right shuttler. Pizzi moved out to the right-hand side. What they did do better is that they pressed from the front better. You'd have Andre Silva stepping forward. You'd have Bernardo Silva stepping with him. You'd have the wider players pushing out to the fullbacks. They were able to try and close down. Yes, they weren't forcing Italy into many mistakes that led to goal-scoring opportunities, but just showed more intent on trying to win the ball back. Even when they dropped off into deeper positions, you had Bernardo get a bit narrow to try and ensure the ball wasn't going out to Jorginho. You had Neves step to Jorginho when required, and he was offering a good job there. And if Andre Silva wasn't on him, that's where you would see him push forward as well. Verratti wasn't able to drop off deeper and get on the ball. It was just much better from Portugal. They never really got going until João Mario came on. He replaced Pizzi. What happened there was that now with João Mario playing on the right-hand side, he was able to tuck in, offer another ball-playing option for Portugal when they were trying to build forward. And he was involved in some of their better chances. We look at one opportunity where Insigne drops off deep and Bernardo looks to follow him. What happens there is that as Bernardo tries to follow him, it's João Mario who intervenes and is able to dispossess him. And that's just one key showing that how he was able to affect the game. We look at another opportunity where João Mario is a bit narrow, and what happens is that Ruben Neves, shortly after that, clips a diagonal out to Cancelo. For the first time, is able to run at Biraghi. He cuts in, he plays the ball into João Mario in the box. He's able to drop Chiellini as he cuts forward, but he's unable to beat Donnarumma. But again, just him getting into those areas is very pivotal. We saw Verratti drop off a bit deeper, and with Verratti dropping off a bit deeper, what ended up leading there was he dropped off. He was swarmed by Andre Silva and Bernardo Silva, was able to hold them off and split it into Barella, but then he was dispossessed. The pass was loose. Ruben Neves ends up sliding a pass into the left half space for Bruma instantly. Bruma runs 1v1 with Bonucci, but Bonucci is able to make that block. You add down the right-hand side again. You have Cancelo, again, running at Biraghi. He's able to scoop the ball into João Mario, who holds off. He's actually able to scoop the ball into Biraghi as he breaks forward. And what happens there is that he's able to try and play the 1-2 with Bruma after Bruma got the ball from, let's get that correct, Cancelo played the ball into Bruma. He's able to play it to João Mario. As Bruma tries to make the run in between the center backs, what happens there is he's squashed out, but it falls to Andre Silva. His cross through the box sees Bonucci clear it into the path of William, and William fires the shot on goal that is pushed away. Italy, not pressing as they were once before, dropping off a bit deeper into their shape. Portugal, now with more ball-playing midfielders and more intent to close down spaces, look much better. However, they still had the issues of Italy playing the ball between the lines and finding pockets, but now the fact that they were closing down, those players weren't able to make the next move, weren't able to play the next decisive pass. There was only one opportunity where Insigne was able to get the ball in between Bernardo and Neves and run at goal, and that's when Rui and Chiesa collided, and we saw Insigne bent his effort inches wide of the net, where he probably should have scored or at least hit the target. When you break the game down as a whole, Italy started well, but Portugal, bringing in Bernardo into a central area, just doing the basics, closing down, not giving Italy time and space in midfield, bringing on João Mario, who offered another threat and did had an influence in some of their better chances in the second half, helped Portugal secure the point, win the group, and they are looking like the real deal. And it's scary because Cristiano Ronaldo hasn't even joined the fold yet. But let me know what you guys think. Is this Italy's best starting lineup going forward with Mancini? What changes should they make? And what about Portugal? Do they need to bring back Ronaldo for the Nations Cup games in June? Can they win without him? Meet me in the comments below. Don't forget I upload videos every day, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And that was your daily dose of the interviews.